For 8 years, the black woman hid her past as a fighter pilot until they forced her to fly again. The hangar was still humming with tension when the crowd finally stopped laughing. They had gathered expecting a spectacle, something to record and snicker about later. A maintenance tech, a black woman in an ill-fitting borrowed flight suit, was being given a chance to sit in a prototype stealth fighter. The joke, of course, was that she didn't belong there. That was the punchline. But now, nobody was laughing. The Griffin ZR-9's turbines ignited with mechanical grace, each system coming online with impossible precision. The aircraft didn't just start up. It awakened like it remembered the hands that once mastered it. Inside the cockpit, Jordan Cole moved with a familiarity that didn't match her job title. Outside, Captain Blake Reynolds, smug just moments ago, had gone pale. Who taught her that sequence?" one of the junior pilots whispered. Nobody answered. They were all too busy watching. From her seat, Jordan's voice came through the radio, calm, clipped, utterly professional. "Griffin Zulu 9 requesting ground clearance." The tower stuttered. "Zulu 9, you're not— Wait. Stand by." But Jordan didn't stand by. She had already eased the throttle, and the Griffin rolled forward on the tarmac with calculated intention. The crowd scattered instinctively as the aircraft gained momentum. Blake lunged toward the radio in the observation room. "What is she doing? She's gonna crash. She's maintenance, for Christ's sake." Across the hangar, Major Evelyn Brooks narrowed her eyes. "No, she's not." 24 hours earlier, Jordan Cole was invisible. She arrived at Redstone Air Base at 0430 like she did every morning, boots scraping over oil-stained concrete, her hair pulled tight under a worn cap. The maintenance crew called her Quiet Storm because she rarely spoke unless it mattered, and when it did, her words cut through nonsense like a scalpel. On paper, Jordan was a Level 2 aircraft systems technician. She serviced engines, ran diagnostics, kept to herself. No one asked where she was from. No one noticed that she never talked about the past. No one knew her real name was Major Jordan Carter. 8 years ago, she had commanded fighters over Syria, led 6 top pilots into a Black Ops mission under U.S. command. And when the op went sideways, when 4 of those pilots died, she took the fall. They said she ignored intelligence. They said her recklessness got them killed. What they didn't say was that Colonel Nathan Kruger, her CO, had leaked their coordinates to foreign intelligence. What they didn't say was that someone at the Pentagon helped bury it. The court-martial had been fast and unforgiving. Her wings, rank, and name, gone. She legally became Jordan Cole, dyed her hair, changed her voice, and disappeared into the world of grease and silence. She never expected to fly again. She certainly never planned on being forced to. That morning, Jordan had just finished replacing a hydraulics relay on a Griffin prototype when Captain Reynolds swaggered over, trailed by 2 of his flight buddies. "Well, well," Blake said, leaning on the edge of the aircraft. "If it isn't our little tech genius." Jordan didn't look up. "Captain," Blake smirked, "I hear you've been poking around the avionics logs, trying to teach yourself how this bird thinks." "Just making sure it runs properly," she said evenly. He snorted. "Please, you wouldn't know the difference between a flight profile and a microwave manual." One of the other pilots chuckled. Jordan tightened the last bolt and stood. "You should really tighten the cross-feed valve before takeoff. It's showing signs of pressure instability." Blake's smirk thinned. "She just Googles things," he said to his crew. "Thinks that makes her an expert." Jordan didn't reply. She didn't need to. The data would prove her right, again. But Blake wasn't done. At the noon training briefing, with half the base gathered, he turned the joke into a spectacle. "I have an idea," he announced, standing in front of the big screen. "Let's give the maintenance crew a little taste of glory." The room went quiet. Let's put our star technician in the Griffin. Let her feel what it's like to sit in the pilot's seat. 5 minutes, no liftoff, just a little start-up sequence. You know, for morale." Laughter broke out. Across the room, Jordan froze. "You up for it, Davis?" Blake said, purposely using the wrong name. "Or are you too scared?" Major Brooks, seated quietly in the back, didn't laugh. She glanced at Jordan, watching closely. Jordan glanced at her supervisor, Chief Master Sergeant Wyatt, who gave her a hesitant nod. "Your call," he said quietly. Jordan could have refused, but she remembered Blake's eyes, that same glint she saw 8 years ago in Kruger's, privilege soaked in cruelty. "I'm in," she said. Now, back in the present, the Griffin rose smoothly from the tarmac. It wasn't just a test run anymore. Jordan didn't mean to push it that far. But once the hum of the engine synced with her breathing, once her hands found the old rhythm of control switches and throttle taps, she became someone else, someone she hadn't been allowed to be in years. Altitude 1,000 feet, turn rate 2.3 Gs, banking hard left, smooth, everything the military had said she wasn't. They were watching it fly. Inside the control room, Colonel Elliot Hale, the base CO, was scrambling on the radio. "Who gave this tech clearance? Get her down, now!" But it was too late. The Griffin dove into a low arc, then lifted again, angling into a perfect hover transition. "Jesus Christ," one of the air traffic officers whispered. "She's not flying it, she's dancing with it." Jordan's voice came through the open frequency. "Base Command, Griffin Zulu 9, completing system check, requesting landing protocol." Even her voice was different, clipped, professional, trained. A pilot's voice. Blake stared at the radar, frozen. She wasn't supposed to." Major Brooks stepped forward. "She was never Davis," she said softly. Everyone turned. "Her name," Brooks said, "is Major Jordan Carter." And then everything broke. In the debriefing room that evening, Jordan stood silently in front of 5 officers, hands at her sides. Colonel Hale's voice was cold. "You violated protocol, endangered a prototype, and disobeyed a direct limitation order." "I executed the procedure flawlessly," Jordan replied, her voice low. "You're a maintenance technician," Hale snapped. "I'm a fighter pilot," she corrected. "Formerly Major Air Force Tactical Squadron 132. Court-martialed for an operation that Colonel Kruger orchestrated behind closed doors." "Those records were sealed," Hale said stiffly. "Not sealed enough," came a voice at the door. General Thomas Rains entered, his silver stars glinting beneath the overhead light. Every head snapped to attention. "I have declassified documentation," Rains said, holding a folder. "Kruger confessed before his death. Captain Carter was innocent. You let her rot here for 8 years." The room went silent. Jordan looked at no one, not the general, not the colonel, not Blake Reynolds, who stood pale in the corner like a man watching his career unravel. "I didn't come back to reclaim anything," she said, "but I won't stay invisible anymore." That night, back in her tiny room, Jordan opened the metal box beneath her cot. Inside were 3 items: a faded flight patch, a photo of her squadron before the mission that changed everything, and a handwritten letter from her old wingman. She unfolded it slowly. "You were the best of us. If something happens, don't let them define you. They can't bury truth forever." Jordan exhaled, long and slow. Tomorrow the world would know her name, and it would never forget it again. Jordan sat motionless in the briefing room, her flight suit half unzipped, still streaked with grease from earlier that day. The silence in the room was suffocating, filled with tension too heavy to cut with words. Her fingers rested on the table, but her eyes didn't blink. They were locked forward, defiant and composed. Major Evelyn Brooks finally broke the silence. "You're not just some tech," she said, her voice steady. "You didn't stumble into that cockpit by accident." Jordan didn't answer right away. She looked toward the closed blinds covering the observation window. Somewhere behind them, she could sense the eyes of every high-ranking officer on base, watching her like a live feed of an active volcano, something they didn't understand and couldn't control. "You were watching," Jordan said softly, "from the moment I stepped on this base." Brooks gave the faintest nod. "I recognized you the first week, but there was no proof. You'd buried your identity too deep. Different name, new background, all of it, flawless." Jordan turned to her. "So why say something now?" Brooks leaned forward. "Because now they're going to use you." That made Jordan pause. "What do you mean, use me?" Brooks didn't blink. "You just humiliated their golden boy on an aircraft no one's ever flown solo outside of simulation. Do you think they're going to let that go? They've got journalists sniffing around, a civilian contractor raising questions about who actually authorized that test flight, and commands desperate for a win. You're their new headline. Disgraced black female pilot redeems herself. That's the story they want." Jordan clenched her jaw. "And if I refuse? They'll say you stole the jet, that you hijacked military tech. You'll be tried again, this time as a civilian." Jordan looked down at her hands, stained with oil, calloused from years of pretending to be someone else. For 8 years she had done what was necessary to survive. She kept her head down, avoided cameras, buried the urge to correct people when they mispronounced her name or treated her like she didn't matter. Now they wanted to dig her up and parade her like a trophy. Back in Colonel Hale's office, a very different conversation was happening. "You're telling me we had an elite pilot scrubbing our landing gear?" Hale asked, his voice taut with disbelief. General Rains remained stoic. "A court-martial doesn't erase instinct. You saw the telemetry. She didn't just fly the Griffin, she understood it. We have trained officers for this. Men who've logged hours in combat. She's a ghost. No background, no recent certification. This is indignity." "Maybe," Rains said, "but she's the only pilot alive who can handle that aircraft, and we both know why we need her." A silence passed between them. "You think Kruger's files are still floating around out there?" Hale said slowly. "I know they are," Rains replied, "and so do the people who paid to make them disappear. If Carter flies again, we control the narrative. If she refuses, those files might surface another way." Hale rubbed his temples. "So what's the plan?" Rains smirked. "We give her a choice that isn't really a choice." Later that evening, Jordan stood outside the barracks, staring up at the dark Alabama sky. The stars here looked exactly like the ones she remembered seeing before her first deployment. So small, so still, so ignorant of the chaos beneath them. She barely noticed when Sergeant Wyatt approached. The older man handed her a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" she asked. "They're reassigning you," he said. "Effective immediately. You're off maintenance, reporting directly to Tactical Flight Division under General Rains." Jordan unfolded the paper. There it was, typed in black and white. Reinstatement as Flight Specialist, Griffin Division. No rank, no apology, just reactivation under a different name. She looked up at Wyatt. "You knew, didn't you?" He hesitated. "I knew you weren't what you said you were, but I didn't want to know more. Figured you had your reasons?" She nodded slowly. "I did." He looked at her, his gaze weary but warm. "You sure you want to go back into the fire?" "No," she said, "but they're dragging me in anyway." By the next morning, the entire base was buzzing. News had spread fast. Captain Jordan Cole had flown the Griffin. People whispered in the halls, stared when she passed. Some saluted, confused about whether they should. Others avoided eye contact altogether. In Hangar 7, the Griffin sat under heavy guard. Contractors swarmed it, running diagnostics, checking telemetry. But none of them could explain how Jordan had done what she did. As she approached the restricted area, Blake Reynolds blocked her path. "Guess you're the Golden Girl now," he said, arms folded. Jordan didn't slow down. "You embarrassed me," he snapped, "in front of everyone." She stopped, turned to face him. "I didn't do it for you. You should have stayed in your lane." "I did," she said, "until you tried to run me off the road." Before he could answer, a voice crackled over the intercom. "Flight Specialist Cole, report to Operations Room 4, immediately." She walked off without another word. Operations Room 4 was nothing like the other briefings. Dark walls, tiered seating, and at the center, a massive screen with satellite footage of a hostile region. Eastern Europe. Jordan recognized the terrain immediately. Raines stood at the front, flanked by CIA liaison Elena Vasquez and a civilian analyst named Ronan Shaw. "This is what you're being trained for," Raines said. "We intercepted chatter that a rogue faction acquired tech blueprints that match the Griffin's profile. We believe it's connected to the Kruger leak 8 years ago. We need someone who understands how that intel was trafficked, someone who flew the original mission." Jordan's stomach turned. This wasn't just a test flight. They were preparing for war, and they were dragging her back into the exact nightmare that cost her everything. "What happens if I say no?" she asked. Vasquez didn't blink. "You go back to being invisible. But the people who covered this up, they keep their power, their pensions, their secrets." Raines added, "Or you fly again. You show the world the truth. You bury the past by rewriting the ending." Jordan looked at the footage, at the encrypted flight paths over enemy airspace. It was happening all over again. Except this time, she wasn't just a pawn. This time, she was flying straight toward the people who tried to erase her, and she wasn't planning to miss. The moment Jordan stepped into the tactical simulator, the atmosphere shifted. This wasn't a simple training exercise. It was a battlefield cloaked in digital haze and political shadows. 4 massive screens surrounded her, each displaying a different scenario. Low visibility flight, mid-air maneuver combat, evasive recovery after weapons failure, and a live replica terrain of Eastern Europe's no-fly zones. The room was filled with brass and analysts pretending not to watch, but Jordan could feel their eyes on her. Every keystroke, every breath she took was being logged, timed, and dissected. "Welcome back to the cockpit, Carter," said Ronan Shaw, the CIA analyst who now shadowed her every move. "I'm still going by Jordan Cole," she replied, not bothering to look at him. He smirked, clipboard in hand. "Sure, until this goes public." She ignored him and focused on the countdown on her screen. 3, 2, 1. The simulator exploded into motion. Her hands moved instinctively, left throttle, right flaps, dive and roll, just like muscle memory. The Griffin's controls had changed over the years, but the soul of it was still the same. She flew like she was born for it. Except this time, someone had tampered with the simulation. "Why are there heat signatures from 2 bogies at 5 o'clock?" she barked, voice sharp. No one responded. She flipped the comms switch manually and locked onto the unidentified aircraft. Both moved like drones, but with speeds that pushed human thresholds. "Those aren't part of the training package," she muttered, eyes narrowing. Suddenly, one of them dove straight at her. Jordan spun the Griffin hard right, feeling the simulated G-force rattle her bones. She launched a countermeasure just in time. A flare blazed through the virtual sky, intercepting the drone and sending it spinning out. The second aircraft stayed back, watching. Then the screen went black. Jordan yanked off the simulator helmet and stood up, heart racing. "What the hell was that?" she demanded. Ronan looked almost amused. "That wasn't part of the training. That was a live simulation based on real satellite intel. You sent me into a live op profile without warning?" General Rains entered the room just then. "We needed to see how you'd react under real-world stress. You passed." "You ambushed me," she snapped. "You don't test pilots like that, not without prep." "You're not just a pilot anymore," Rains said. "You're our last line before this thing hits the open market." Jordan wanted to scream, but more than that, she wanted to understand why those bogies flew like they knew her, because she'd seen that pattern before, 8 years ago. Later that night, Jordan sat alone in her bunk, staring at the photo she always kept hidden at the bottom of her locker. It was old, faded, and cracked at the edges. 3 faces smiled back. Her, Lieutenant Maya Thorne, and Captain Devin Maddox. They had flown the original mission together. Now, Maya was gone. Killed in action, they claimed. But Devin had vanished. There had never been a body. Just a funeral with a closed casket and a folded flag handed to a woman Jordan had never seen before. She couldn't shake the feeling. What if Devin wasn't dead? What if he'd switched sides? Her thoughts were interrupted by a quiet knock. Sergeant Wyatt leaned in, his face unusually grave. "I heard something," he whispered, "from a guy who used to work comms clearance. He said someone ran a scan on your personnel file today." Jordan stiffened. "Who?" "Classified network, but whoever it was, they scrubbed it clean, like they were never there." She stood, suddenly alert. "That doesn't happen without top-level clearance." "Exactly, and one more thing. There's movement in Hangar 12, off the books. Night crews not logged. Whatever they're doing, they don't want it traced." Jordan slipped on her jacket and headed straight for the restricted hangar, heart pounding. The base was quiet, lights low, guards thin. She crouched behind a crate and watched. 2 men in unmarked uniforms wheeled a large container toward a transport truck. She couldn't make out what was inside, but the moment the crate shifted, a corner of military green metal glinted under the top. Not just any metal, Griffin-grade titanium. And right there, painted near the edge, was a partial serial code. Jordan knew that code. It matched the prototype that had gone missing the day after her final classified mission. She pulled out her phone and took a photo, then thought better of it and deleted it. Too dangerous to leave a trace. This wasn't about her reinstatement. This was about something far bigger. The next morning, Colonel Hale stormed into Rains's office. "You never told me she was being tracked," he said, slamming a report down on the desk. Rains looked up, unfazed. "Because she wasn't. Not until now." "Then how the hell did her simulation get hijacked?" Rains leaned back. "Because someone on this base doesn't want her flying again. Someone who knows exactly what happened to the prototype." "You think it's an inside job? I think it's always been one," Rains said coldly. "And Carter, Jordan, is the only one with a real shot at exposing it." Hale hesitated. "What if they come after her? They already have." Jordan stood at the edge of the runway as a new day dawned over Alabama. The roar of a fighter jet cut through the morning sky. But it wasn't hers. Not yet. As she stared into the horizon, one thought kept circling back. If they thought burying her past would keep her grounded, they had another thing coming. Because she wasn't just back. She was about to make the sky hers again. The silence inside General Rains's private conference room was thick with tension. A single folder lay open on the table. Satellite images, schematics, personnel logs, all pointing to one disturbing conclusion. Someone had restarted Project Phantom without clearance. and someone inside the base was making sure Jordan never found out the whole truth. "You were never supposed to see that crate," Rains said, hands folded, voice steady. Jordan stood across from him, jaw clenched. "You don't get to decide what I should see anymore." Rains stared at her for a long moment. "You think this is still about you? About your name, your rank, your damn legacy?" She leaned in. "I think someone is trying to erase every person who was part of the original mission, and I think you're more scared of me flying again than you are of whoever's pulling the strings." He didn't deny it. Back at the barracks, Jordan found Wyatt waiting. His face was pale. "There's something else," he whispered. One of the drone feeds from Hangar 12 caught a man entering the restricted cargo bay last night. I pulled a still. He handed her a printed image. The face in the photo was grainy but unmistakable. Devin Maddox. Jordan staggered back a step. "No," she said, voice hoarse. "That's not possible. He died. I saw the crash reports, the mission logs. They were forged." The words dropped like a hammer. Jordan turned away, her thoughts spiraling. 8 years ago, Devin had been her wingman, her closest ally, and possibly the one man who had truly understood her. They were the top of their class, nearly unbeatable in the air, bonded through countless ops. And then, one day, he vanished. KIA, they said, except it wasn't true. "Where was this taken?" she asked, gripping the photo. "Near the black site storage unit tied to Phantom." Jordan swore under her breath. "They brought him back in. Or he never left," Wyatt said quietly. That night she broke into the database archives. The server room was quiet, air cold and humming with machines. Using Wyatt's credentials, she accessed Level 7 logs, something only top brass or high clearance officers could touch. Her hands moved quickly, years of classified experience guiding her. She searched for Phantom's decommission records. Nothing. She searched for Devin Maddox. Redacted. She tried a back door, an old trick from her ops days. And there it was. A shadow file buried under encrypted code, misnamed as Inventory Clearance, Dry Storage. Inside, she found it. Flight logs dated just 2 months ago. Maddox's ID. Flight path. Cargo manifest. A Griffin prototype. She stared at the screen, her chest tightening. He was alive, and he was flying. The next morning, Colonel Hale called an emergency briefing. The tone in his voice was different, hushed, clipped, urgent. "This base has been compromised," he said, scanning the room of senior officers. "Last night we detected unauthorized data access to Level 7 logs, and this morning one of the ground crew who worked Hangar 12 was found unconscious. No camera footage, no witnesses." Jordan remained still, poker-faced. Hale's eyes swept over the group. "We're shutting down all non-essential ops. Until further notice, no one leaves the base without clearance." Jordan met Wyatt's eyes across the room. They were closing in. But not on her. Someone else was getting desperate. That night, Jordan received a burner phone under her door. No note, no number. Just a single video message cued on the screen. She pressed play. It was a cockpit view. Grainy, shaky, but clear enough to see the man flying. Devin. His voice came through, distorted by the radio feed. "I know you're watching this, Jay," he said. "If you're seeing it, they're already spinning the story. I didn't die. I didn't defect either. They turned on me, told me to take the fall for an op that went sideways." He paused, glancing off screen as if someone was approaching. "I did what I had to do to survive. You're not safe either. They're gearing up for something bigger, something offshore. If you want the truth, meet me where it all started. The old test range in Nevada. Midnight." The screen went black. Jordan's pulse thundered. Wyatt was already knocking on her door. "We've got a problem," he said. "They're moving the prototype, off base, tonight." Jordan stood up, mind racing. "We're not letting it leave. How the hell do we stop a covert op run by people with full access and federal cover?" She grabbed her duffel bag and pulled out her old flight gloves. "We outfly them." Wyatt blinked. "You mean steal a jet?" "I mean borrow it," she said. "They forced me to fly again. It's time they remembered what that actually means." As the moon rose over the desert runway, two silhouettes moved under cover of night. Jordan and Wyatt, dressed in maintenance uniforms, approached the reserve hangar where an unused Griffin sat tucked under a camo tarp. The plane gleamed under the halogen lights like a sleeping beast. "I can't believe we're doing this," Wyatt muttered. "Believe it," Jordan replied, eyes locked on the jet. "Because if Devon was alive, and if the prototype was in motion, then the war they thought ended 8 years ago was just beginning. And this time, she wasn't flying to follow orders. She was flying to take them down." The hangar door groaned as it opened, slow and deliberate, casting long shadows across the tarmac. Jordan's boots crunched on the gravel as she stepped out, helmet tucked under one arm, heart pounding with a rhythm she hadn't felt in years. Across the hangar, the Griffin prototype gleamed under the flickering overhead lights, sleek, dangerous, and unfamiliar in all the right ways. Wyatt exhaled beside her. "You really sure about this?" "No," she said, climbing the ladder up to the cockpit. "But I'm done being sure. I'm done playing safe." Inside the cockpit, her fingers danced across the controls like muscle memory. Systems activated, HUD flickered to life. Everything felt too natural, terrifyingly so. Wyatt's voice crackled through the headset. "Jordan, control towers showing idle, no patrols in this quadrant. We've got a 5-minute window." "Copy that," she said, flipping the ignition sequence. The Griffin roared awake, but just before she could taxi out, the warning alarm blared. "Unauthorized engine start detected. Lockdown initiated." Wyatt cursed. "They're on to us." Jordan's jaw locked. "I can still lift." "No, you can't," Wyatt hissed. "They'll scramble interceptors in under 3 minutes." "Then I'll be gone in 2. She slammed the throttle forward. The hangar doors weren't even fully open. The jet burst through the narrow gap, sparks flying as the wingtips clipped the edge. The sudden velocity threw her back in the seat. Alarms wailed across the base as sirens flared and red lights danced across the sky. From the control tower, Colonel Hale shouted, "Scramble the Hawks! Shoot her down if you have to!" But Jordan was already gone. Within 30 seconds, the Griffin climbed above 30,000 feet, breaking radar lock and slipping into blackout mode. Silence returned to the cockpit, broken only by her breathing. She adjusted heading, straight for Nevada. Meanwhile, back on base, General Rains stood watching the satellite feed with clenched fists. "She wasn't supposed to find that jet," he growled. "She did more than find it," said Major Yates. "She flew it like she never left." Rains's eyes narrowed. "Call Langley. Tell them Operation Phantom just went hot." Miles away, Jordan glided over the desert. The old test range came into view, half-buried bunkers, scorched runways, long-forgotten towers leaning like ghosts from a different war. She landed without lights, skidding to a stop on cracked asphalt, and waiting in the shadows, Devon. He stepped forward, older, leaner, haunted. "You made it," he said quietly. "You sent for me," she replied. They stared at each other for a moment that stretched longer than the years between them. He spoke first. "They used us, Jay. Phantom was never about defense. It was about control, AI-driven combat, pilot override systems, payload testing on foreign targets without congressional approval." "And the crash that killed your crew?" she asked, voice cold. "They were test subjects," I disobeyed orders, tried to leak what we knew. They faked my death and buried me behind black site assignments." Her hands balled into fists. "I should have known something was wrong. They made me a scapegoat, discharged me under classified terms. They told me if I talked, people would die." Devon looked away. "You still have time to walk, but I can't. I've been running too long." "No," Jordan said, her voice steely. "We both go forward." He looked back at her with a flicker of the old fire. "I have something to show you." They walked toward a makeshift underground bay hidden beneath a weathered concrete hatch. Inside, glowing monitors lined the walls, a full command center powered by stolen tech. Satellite taps, encrypted fields, and a large touchscreen interface dominated the room. Devon pulled up a file marked Phantom Revival Directive. Names popped up. High-ranking officers, contractors, foreign defense liaisons. At the center was Rains. "They're planning to sell the Griffin's control systems to private militaries," Devon said. "A bidding war in the shadows." Jordan's jaw tightened. This is treason." "No," he replied. "This is the new war, quiet, profitable, untraceable." She stared at the names, then at the evidence. "We need to get this to the press, to someone who'll force a hearing." "You do that," he said, "and they'll bury you like they did me." She took a long breath. "Then let them try." Back at the base, Wyatt was cornered. Military police surrounded him in the maintenance shed. "You aided in an act of espionage," Hale barked. Wyatt smiled. "I helped a friend fly a jet. Not a crime unless you're hiding something." Hale's hand tightened on his belt. "You think this is a game? I think you're scared of what's coming. Get him out of my sight," Hale snapped. "We'll deal with him after we bring her in." But even as they hauled Wyatt away, a tremor of doubt crept across Hale's face. Because Jordan Price was airborne again, and she was just getting started. The morning sun bled across the Nevada desert like a warning flare. Dust swirled in spirals as the heat shimmered over the cracked test range. Jordan stood alone near the tarmac, eyes fixed on the horizon, her jaw locked, hands clenched at her sides. Last night's discovery hadn't left her. Not the faces in those files, not the revelations, and certainly not the sick feeling that everything she had once fought for had been corrupted from the inside out. Devon approached from behind, carrying 2 battered duffel bags and a stack of printed dossiers. "They'll be here soon," he said. Jordan didn't turn. "I know. They're not coming to talk. I'm not coming to hide." He sighed and stepped beside her. "We can still vanish. You and me. We've got the Griffin. We've got evidence. It'd be enough to start over." Jordan shook her head slowly. "I didn't run for 8 years just to disappear again. I came back to finish what they started, and if that means facing them head-on, so be it." Before Devon could respond, the first low hum of rotor blades rippled through the air. 2 transport helicopters approached from the southeast, kicking up clouds of sand as they descended in sync. Moments later, 6 Humvees followed, emerging like ants from the valley trail, a convoy with clear intent. Jordan and Devon exchanged a glance. "We split here," she said. "You head to the ridge. Get the drives to Wyatt. He knows a guy at the New York Times who'll run this without blinking." "What about you?" She smiled faintly. "I've got an old friend to talk to." The choppers hadn't even landed when General Rains stepped out of the lead Humvee. Immaculate in a crisp, tan uniform, his posture was rigid, but there was unease in his eyes. He scanned the horizon until he spotted her, standing in front of the hangar like she belonged there. He motioned to his men. "Bring her in." The soldiers hesitated. "She's unarmed, sir." Rains didn't blink. That woman took off in a billion-dollar aircraft without authorization. I don't care if she's holding a feather duster. Bring her in. 4 men advanced. Jordan didn't move. She waited until they were 10 feet away, then raised her voice calmly. You're following orders from a man who sold out this country. That made them stop. You want to arrest me? Fine. But do it knowing that the jet I flew yesterday was supposed to be scrapped 5 years ago. Instead, it was upgraded with tech from foreign contractors. No oversight, no Congress, no accountability. One of the soldiers glanced toward Rains, visibly confused. Ask him why, Jordan pressed. Ask him how many lives were traded to keep Project Phantom alive, or why his name appears on 20 different shell companies tied to black market arms deals. Rains snapped. That's enough. He stormed forward, fury breaking through his control. You don't get to grandstand, Price. You were a ghost. You disappeared when your country needed you most. I saved your career once. I buried your mistakes, and this is how you repay me? Jordan's eyes narrowed. You didn't bury my mistakes, Rains. You buried the truth. The moment hung heavy. Then a voice crackled through the radio on Rains's belt. Sir, we've got a breach in Sector 3. Someone's uploading from an external drive, encrypted files. They're hitting news outlets. Rains turned pale. No, he whispered. Jordan took a step forward. You think you can silence everyone, but the world's watching now. He lunged, fury overtaking reason, grabbing for her arm. Instinct took over. Jordan twisted out of his grip, sweeping his legs out from under him in one clean motion. He hit the ground hard, groaning. The soldiers rushed forward, but not to attack, to stand between them and him. Sir, one said carefully, I think we need to wait for confirmation before we act further. From his earpiece, a new voice chimed in. This is Lieutenant Colonel Brenner, Pentagon Liaison. All personnel are to stand down immediately. Project Phantom is now under federal review. General Rains is to be taken into custody. Rains froze. What? The soldier looked down. Hands where we can see them, sir. Jordan watched silently as the man who once orchestrated her downfall was disarmed and cuffed by his own people. It was almost too quiet when it was over. Only the desert wind remained, brushing against her skin like a sigh of release. She turned to see Devon standing on the ridge in the distance, giving her a slow nod. They had done it. But this wasn't the end, it was the reckoning, and it was just beginning. The courtroom was packed. Press, military brass, civil rights attorneys, and a silent row of airmen in uniform, seated like sentinels. It wasn't just another hearing, it was the beginning of a national reckoning. Jordan Price walked in, not in combat boots or a pilot jumpsuit, but a charcoal gray blazer and slacks, hair neatly pulled back. She didn't need the uniform to command the room. Her presence alone silenced the whispers. She paused as she approached the witness stand, making brief eye contact with Devon seated near the front. He gave her a nod, subtle but steadying. The lead prosecutor, Angela Knox, stood. Ms. Price, thank you for your courage in coming forward. Let's begin. Jordan leaned toward the mic. I'm not here out of courage. I'm here because I ran out of excuses. A low murmur swept the gallery. For 8 years, I lived with the lie that stepping away was the safest thing I could do. I thought I was protecting people. But silence doesn't protect anyone. It just buries the truth. Knox nodded gently. Let's talk about Project Phantom. Jordan took a breath. It was supposed to be a defensive program, experimental aircraft, enhanced stealth capabilities. But somewhere along the way, it became something else. Unregistered flights, foreign tech spliced into American systems, funds funneled through dummy cores, and lives discarded. She paused, voice steady. I knew it, and I stayed quiet. The room was still. Even the judge sat forward slightly. Knox flipped through a document. You submitted a sealed file naming key figures involved. Would you confirm for the record General Leonard Rains, Colonel Walter Gray, and Secretary Conrad Flannery? Yes? And do you have evidence they authorized extrajudicial operations overseas using Phantom-class aircraft without congressional oversight? Jordan nodded. Yes, including missions resulting in civilian casualties they later denied happened. A gasp broke from the back row. One of the defense attorneys for the accused stood red-faced. Objection! This is unsubstantiated character assassination. Knox turned calmly. Your Honor, we have digital flight logs, intercepted communications, and classified memos corroborated by Ms. Price's first-hand testimony. The judge didn't even blink. Objection overruled. As the proceedings continued, Jordan glanced across the room and spotted someone she hadn't expected. Valerie Rains, the daughter of General Rains. A civilian now, but once a flight coordinator for Phantom operations. She'd disappeared after the scandal broke. Now she sat alone, hands folded tightly, eyes on Jordan. After court recessed for lunch, Jordan approached her in the hallway. Didn't expect to see you here. Valerie looked up slowly. I needed to. Jordan waited. My father. He made me believe we were doing the right thing, that the ends justified the means. Valerie's voice trembled. But he lied to all of us. Jordan softened. He lied to you, not through you. Valerie pulled out a flash drive. I copied the original launch orders for Phantom Bravo, the one they scrubbed from the archives. It proves Flannery knew. And it implicates more people than anyone guessed. Jordan stared at the drive. You sure about this? Valerie nodded. They ruined too many lives. I won't let them keep doing it. That evening, on a live national broadcast, Angela Knox stood flanked by Jordan, Valerie, and Devon. A press conference unlike any other. We are initiating a full federal investigation into black-budget military projects. Criminal referrals will follow, and for the first time in decades, the American people will get the truth. A reporter shouted from the back, Miss Price, do you regret coming forward now, after so many years? Jordan stepped to the podium. I regret the silence, not this. Do you think the system will ever truly change? She met his eyes. Only if we make it. As the cameras flashed, Jordan didn't feel like a survivor. She felt like a fighter again. But this time she wasn't flying solo. The Senate chamber buzzed with anticipation. Cameras lined the back wall, lenses pointed toward the witness table like cannons. News tickers across the nation flashed updates every second. Whistleblower testifies. Black female pilot exposes military cover-up. Jordan Price stood just behind the velvet curtain, her palms damp. 8 years ago, she had vanished into civilian life, buried under the weight of duty, guilt, and a secret so volatile it could bring down half of Washington. Now, she was moments away from detonating that truth. A congressional aide peeked through the curtain. They're ready for you. She nodded once, then stepped out into the full, blinding light of public reckoning. As Jordan sat, the room fell silent. The chairman cleared his throat. Ms. Price, thank you for being here. We understand this wasn't an easy choice. Jordan leaned into the microphone, her voice calm but laced with steel. It wasn't a choice, it was a responsibility. She detailed everything. Project Phantom's secret missions, the manipulation of drone strikes, the blackmailing of operatives who dared ask questions, the manipulation of her own discharge file. Names, dates, coordinates, receipts. It was clinical. But then came the moment that shook even the most hardened senators. They told me to bomb a village in western Mali. Intel said it was a terrorist hub, but there were no hostiles there, just families, kids. They knew. They gave the order anyway, and when I questioned it, they threatened to destroy my life. A gasp echoed from the gallery. The chairman leaned forward. "Who gave that order, Ms. Price?" Jordan hesitated. This was it. Secretary Conrad Flannery, authorized through General Rains, and Colonel Walter Gray ran operational logistics. The chamber exploded. Reporters dashed out. Phones rang. Senators turned to whisper among aides. A woman in the front row began to cry. Outside the chamber, security scrambled. Inside, the truth spread like wildfire. But Jordan wasn't done. There's a culture in our military where silence is rewarded and accountability is feared. I'm not here to dismantle the system. I'm here to demand we fix it. We owe that to every soldier who followed orders, thinking it was the right thing. The chairman's voice cracked. "Miss Price, we owe you more than thanks." A standing ovation erupted. Some clapped with awe, others in shame. Later that night, Jordan returned to her small apartment. She had refused government protection, rejected a penthouse offer from a nonprofit, and ignored dozens of interview requests. She turned on the old TV, flipping past her own face on 3 different channels. Then a knock. It was Devin. He stood in the doorway, holding a single paper envelope. "It's from Valerie." Inside was a letter. "Jordan, I've left D.C. for good. I'm rebuilding somewhere far from this noise, but I wanted you to know. My father was arrested this morning. He tried to deny everything until they played the recordings. Yours, mine. You saved lives today. You changed the story." Jordan folded the letter gently. Devin watched her. "How's it feel knowing it's finally over?" She looked out the window. In the distance, planes crossed the sky like silent witnesses. It's not over. It's just begun. Weeks later, a grassroots movement exploded across the country. Former service members, whistleblowers, and victims of military overreach joined together, calling for transparency and reform. Congress passed the Phantom Accountability Act. Several high-ranking officials resigned or were indicted. Jordan never returned to active duty, but she became something far more powerful, a symbol, not of perfection, but of resilience. And one morning, while speaking at a high school in Atlanta, a girl in the front row asked, "Do you ever wish you hadn't done it?" Jordan smiled. "No, because courage isn't doing something without fear. It's doing it while you're still terrified. So what can we take from this? That sometimes the strongest warriors aren't the ones who fire missiles or wear stars on their collars. Sometimes they're the ones who break the silence, who stand alone in a room of power and speak for those who can't." If Jordan's story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you know or someone you want to be, then don't let it end here. Hit that like button. Share this video. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that speak truth, spark change, and give voice to the silent. Because justice isn't a moment, it's a movement.